extra podcast from the hosts of the Community Pulse. Let's hear what your hosts are talking about in this episode.
That was a fantastic episode. Not only for the topics, not only for the things that we talked about, but also it was great to see SJ again.
Yeah.
So good to see SJ. It was great. Missed her.
But then also the hot takes. Fantastic.
The spicy commentary was great.
Yeah.
She brought in some great ideas too.
I think that the most interesting thing that SJ brought was the fact that, like, I feel like when we were planning for this episode, we were like, all right, yeah, we're really going to super hot takes. Yeah, controversy, recording controversy. And then, like, SJ was like, yeah, like, we all kind of think this. Like, maybe we don't always say it out loud, but, like, this is definitely what we're all thinking. It's like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good point. Like, sometimes I think we get so mixed up in our internal, for lack of a better term, bullshit, that we forget that, like, a lot of people, and I should say our individual bullshit, but a lot of people that are a part of this community 100% agree that, you know, DevRel is not marketing. 100% agree that it's dumb to get rid of your DevRel organization. Like, it's they're less hot takes and more like, yeah, we all get that, but maybe it's finally time to say it out loud so we can start advocating for ourselves.
Well, I think this is the episode in where, you know, we expand our listener base, right? Maybe get it up to the C-suite. Maybe we get it to some other departments, and maybe as it spreads, it'll become spicier. You know, like it simmers.
Yes,
with these new groups.
It's like when you first put everything into a chili. A chili is not spicy when you start. It's spicy because it takes time.
Yeah,
that's right. Tomorrow's chili is way spicier.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, the more we dove into it, I think we were all amped to really get in there and start swinging with some hot ideas and controversy. And some of it is stuff we've been talking about forever. And there's people within our community who obviously feel exactly like we do, you know, a little bit of an echo chamber, I'm sure. But there are people who may not agree with some of the things we said. But I do think that hopefully these messages or these ideas surface or, you know, rise to the surface for some other folks as well outside of our usual listener base. Maybe some people who listen to us will send this on to their manager or whoever else, and not in a see I told you kind of way, but hey, this is interesting. Yeah,
I think we need to measure the success by how many people trash this episode.
Yes.
If they can say, can you believe
will
what
we
they were
even
saying? That means we
Yeah.
made it. Yeah.
We're at Twitter and Blue Sky. Feel free to hit us up.
Yeah.
Community_Pulse and Community Pulse, respectively. So
funny you say that, Paige, about social media, because one of the other hot takes I didn't really think about until we were pretty much done was we're not super active on social media. I mean, we usually put the link to the episode. Yeah, sorry, we as community. Well, but actually, I don't know if I've told you all here, I've decided X is not for me. Twitter is not what it used to be, and I don't want to be there. And I'm not sure really how much value social media is providing me in a professional sense anymore, other than LinkedIn, ironically. But you know, that's another take for another day is what is social media for us these days, and does it provide value? And but anyway, I digress a little bit there, but I think that there's just a lot of stuff out there's a lot of is it friction is the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of just bumpiness going on, I think, in the developer relations space right now. We've had some friends, some colleagues who have been laid off, myself included. It continues to happen. It's every week, it seems like we learn of somebody new who has been impacted by something. And that obviously is a big, probably motivator of our intentions here and what we wanted to talk about. Which is, hard because we can't save developer relations just by going on a podcast and making these hot takes, but hopefully the conversations will continue, and I think we can make a positive impact.
Yeah, there's a lot of friction, and before it was bumping, and now it's pretty ugly out there. It's a lot of bumping uglies going on, which is,
but not in the good way.
Yeah, not in the good way.
Yeah,
I don't even know what to do with that right there.
That's what he said.
I think that I think that a lot of it has to do with a lot of what we touched on, and something that I think was kind of a theme through the hot takes, and that's perceptions. People are not perceiving that we're bringing value right now. People are not perceiving that this is an activity that needs to take place, and people are they're not perceiving that this is something they need to spend money on. Which is funny because like the first rule of business is you have to spend money to make money. That seems to have gone away due to whatever the financial climate, which is hot. Inflation is bullshit. It's made up by companies that want to make money, and the recession never happened. So all you CEOs should hire all those fucking people back. I'm just saying. You said a recession is why you had rifts. That's not why you had rifts. Try again.
Yep.
And that, I mean, that's a part to it. And I mean, for those of you, I don't know if this will go out before or after, but if you see my talk at DevRel Con, I'm going to touch on these things a bit. Like these are things we have to be concerned. And there was an issue that we were going to touch on that we didn't. And that's like, how did the rise of things like Web3 and NFTs and crypto delegitimize not necessarily our platform, but how we do business. When we're perceived as selling something that doesn't benefit everyone and not building a community around it, but just being an influencer about it, how does that make us look in the eyes of our future prospective employers? That's a concern we have. That's a hot take we didn't touch on, but it goes back to like, why are we perceived as marketing? Why are we perceived as, living the rock star lifestyle? Why are we looked at as a nice to have, but not a necessity? And I think all of these factors play into it. I think there's a much larger conversation that needs to happen there. And maybe
like
that's
a degradation of integrity. Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well,
like we are starting to look less and less legitimate.
I don't want to make a blanket statement. I don't think that that's the case everywhere.
Well, no, I'm not saying. I'm saying this is what we need to discuss, though. I'm not just saying that as a statement, but it definitely needs to be discussed. There's definitely lots of factors.
And it's not just developer relations. We've seen lots of people in tech who, the Microsoft one is the one that impacted me the most, and it wasn't DevRel. Obviously, there were people in DevRel who were impacted, but it's really a retraction of, it's a response to the growth that companies have had, and then market changes. And in order to impress Wall Street or investors or whatever the case is, they've got to show on paper that they're making money and that they have resources allocated in the right places. And I understand that, as a person who's just been in business forever. I don't think, it's not something that's completely unique to developer relations. I think, we obviously, this is our world, and we are impacted more than anybody. And we want to discuss these things and look for ways to right the ship and help people. But I don't want to make it sound like this is something like developer relations is in some sort of dire condition. That's just not the case. There's plenty of examples out there where things are going really well. The leadership understands the role of developer relations in the big picture, and they love what those folks do and what they bring to the table and how they advance the big picture of the business, even if it is difficult sometimes to tie that back to a sales number or some sort of like profit.
Right. I'll add to that, Jason. I think that the part of the issue is we kind of feel like because we are people that try to answer questions, right? Well, that's what we do in DevRel. Like, you come to us with your issues, we try to explain to you how to fix it using our technology. That's kind of what we do. And so we want, like, why are people getting let go? I want a simple answer. I want a simple answer so I can deliver it to others. But none of these things have none of the hot takes that we had, none of the questions that we ask have simple answers. And that's why, like, this podcast is great. It gives a 35, 40-minute catharsis to some issues so that people know, and maybe this is why it was so great on this issue, on these topics. But it gives them a sense of like, hey, I'm not alone. I'm not the only person thinking this. Other DevRel folks, think this, and therefore I'm not alone in my thinking. Now let's try to look at the macro and micro factions that are working on that. Wesley?
I was thinking that the state of DevRel sometimes reminds me of the iconic aircraft carrier with the big banner that says "Mission Accomplished."
Mission accomplished.
The people who, or some of the people who are being let go in DevRel, I think in some cases is because they are successful. They are establishing a process. They are getting the word out. They're creating content and pipeline. And then people higher up are like, okay, we don't need you anymore. Job's done. And don't realize that it is more sustained effort that is going to keep that coming, and is going to also be able to pivot when things are, not exactly the same. You need to be nimble. You have to be adaptive, and they're losing that talent, and at the same time setting their like goodwill on fire. But at the same time, but I think maybe they think, look, everything seems right. Like almost like in I worked in IT. I'm sure a lot of people did. When things aren't broken, people don't understand the value.
They
when
start to
things
ask
are
questions.
Yeah.
Do I need to spend money on this?
Right. It's like taking away the umbrella because it's like I don't feel it raining anymore.
Right.
So,
I always compare it to, I think, the conversation that a lot of people need to have if they're given a seat at the table to have the conversation. We're thinking about downsizing the DevRel team. We're thinking about getting rid of the DevRel team. Okay, why is that? Well, because we think that you've done it. You've set it up. We're good to go. Okay, so are you getting rid of all of engineering then too? Why? Well, I mean, you have the product. It's out there. It's good to go. If you're not, like, DevRel's never done.
This is like my hot take about like leadership being thin.
Exactly. And it needs to. It's an evolution. Like, yes, congratulations. You've completed step 1 of DevRel. It's time to go on to step 2. So your mud kipper is leaving. It has formed its legs and is now walking on the land. That's how far you've gotten. This is where you want to stop, because we've got to get all the way to human beings and beyond, if that's what you want to do.
I wanted to call out too. We keep saying developer relations, but let's also just remind our audience that this isn't just about developer relations. It's kind of community development and developer relations advocacy. SJ, is a manager of community there at HubSpot. So this isn't unique, because in some places there is a very distinct difference between the community team, management team. There's a docs team. There's all these other things. And then there's the developer advocates or developer relations team.
And there's DevRel Ops, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is across the board. And hopefully this episode, I don't think it's going to be real eye-opening for a lot of our audience. They're going to be nodding their head with a lot of this, but hopefully it gives them a little bit of language or inspiration or, just motivation to talk more about these things openly, because I think the decision makers are not us in a lot of these situations. And so the more we're open and transparent and talk about these things, and it's not just about how it impacts us personally. Obviously, it's never good to lose a job and that kind of thing, but all of us are very talented. Everybody in developer relations and community building, super talented people, or we wouldn't be here. And there's other things for us to do to leverage those talents. But we love what we do, and we see the value more than anybody, and it would be really sad to see those things go just because there's a misunderstanding or just because there's a lack of conversation.
Right. And I think that you bring an interesting point here, because I think that one of the things that I've always said about conference talks and blog posts in a lot of cases is this is not the end all be all. This is the start of a conversation. I'm giving you a talking point. I've proselytized to so many people why I love the hallway track so much, because we just had a conversation. Now the event that you're at should be giving you some time to discuss that with your peers, or compare notes to people who are in other talks if it's a multi-track conference. But I gave you something to start a conversation, discuss it. I might be wrong. Tell me if you think I'm wrong. If everyone just sits here and nods their head and agrees and there's no conversation, okay, I'll stop. But if everybody sits there and nods their head and there's no conversation, that doesn't move us along a track at all. Then we just sit there and complacency sets in, and like there's no innovation. And like in my mind, like no innovation, stagnation is like the worst thing possible. That's stagnation is comes just a minute before decadence and degradation. That's all there is to it. That's my hot take.
Cats and dogs living together.
Wesley has referenced so many movies today. But yeah, and maybe that's a good place to stop. Like there's probably no end to the hot takes, and we don't expect that everyone's going to universally agree with everything we say. But let that be the start of the conversation. Let's talk
Yeah.
about things. Let's figure it
And
out.
I hope
together.
other people don't feel alone. I hope they listen to this and they're like, feel like they can join us in our sentiment as well. So this is a unifying podcast, not just a dividing one.
Yeah, we're here to welcome conversation, not to shy away from it.
Right. And also don't forget that we on this recording here, this is just 3 perspectives. We had SJ on the Community Pulse recording. That does not cover the full gamut of what developer relations, advocacy, community building, all that kind of stuff as far as lived experiences. So we are sharing with you what we see, what we hear out in the community, and things that are quite honestly top of mind and bothering us. Everything that we talked about in the episode are things that repeatedly come up in our weekly calls, as we just get together as friends and talk about what's going on in the world. These are the things that are important to us, and felt like it was worthwhile to spend some time and raise some awareness to some of these, whether they're hot takes or not, lukewarm takes. They're just ideas that I think are floating around there that people are spending a significant amount of time thinking about lately, and some of it in a very anxious way. And I guess we just want to know that we want you to all know, the audience, that we're thinking about them too. They are top of mind for us, and hopefully together we can discuss all these things and find a good path forward. So, Wesley, PJ, got anything else before we say goodbye?
No, I was reminded a little bit. I was watching a news program earlier, and there was a young kid, and there were a bunch of young punks running through a neighborhood doing ding dong dash. This young kid was kind of walking through the neighborhood, following him, and on the one doorbell, he stopped and he said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, you matter. You're important. People care about you." And I think that with all the hot takes and all the mudslinging and stuff that goes on in the world, just remember, like, hey, you're important. Take care of yourself because you do matter, and we do care about you.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you, PJ, Wesley, and thank you to SJ for joining us with the Community Pulse recording. And this has been a really great conversation. Look forward to discussing a lot of these more in depth, maybe in future episodes. So with that, thank you all, and we will see you on the next episode of the Community Pulse and the After Pulse.
Bye, everybody.
This has been another episode of After Pulse with Mary Thengvall, Jason Hand, PJ Haggerty, and Wesley Faulkner. Learn more at communitypulse.io